邊個？
今日局長呢度有，同埋民航處處長同埋建築處處長都有嘅。
OK。邊個係呢個？我睇睇邊個係 AD 啊 ？RCAD 係邊個？
梁冠基先生。梁冠基先生。
RCAD 中文係咪？
梁冠基。
唔係 Director of Architectural Services。
建築處處長。
建築處處長。我首先歡迎。
First of all, I'd like to welcome the Bureau Director and his colleagues. I won't introduce them one by one, as you have quite a big team here. In order to save time, would you please be the conductor of your team and inform us who will speak? Welcome all of you. Today we are on report number 63, chapter 3. So we'll mainly focus on chapter 3. And the main speaker will be Mr. Kenneth Leung. I understand that Mr. Chung, the Bureau Director, and his colleague from the ASD as well as the CAD will speak. So perhaps you should speak first. First of all, I have to thank the Audit for its report on administration of the air traffic control and related services, as well as the CAD headquarters. I'd also like to thank the Public Accounts Committee for allowing us further opportunities to explain the situation to you. We accept all the recommendations of the audit and are actively implementing them. First of all, I'd like to say something about chapters 3 and 4 of the report, number 63, and the salient points, and we'll invite the CAD and other colleagues to respond. In the region, the aviation industry is rapidly growing. We have to upgrade our air traffic control, ATC, and related services, and our handling capacity in order to enhance safety and efficiency. As regards aviation policies, we support the CAD in its construction of the new headquarters as well as the replacement of the ATC systems. In 2007, we submitted proposals to the LegCo and obtained funding approval from the Finance Committee, FC. These two major projects are under the Capital Works Fund. Therefore, all projects under that fund have to go through specified procedures and guidelines. The duties of bureaus and departments are spelled out therein. Given our policy objectives, we'll vet recommendations from departments to see whether or not they comply with our policy direction. The construction of the CAD new headquarters as well as the replacement of the ATC system will enhance the overall efficiency of the CAD as well as its handling capacity. Thus, we can reinforce our status as the aviation hub in the region. So they've got policy support from the THB. The CAD is the user of the new headquarters. It proceeded with the project. With the policy support of the THB, the CAD defined the project scope and conducted public consultation. The ASD is the overall supervisor to monitor progress, expenditure, etc. The Director of Architectural Services is the controlling officer. The two departments have to closely cooperate to make sure that the expenditure won't exceed that approved by the FC, and the approved items must totally comply with those approved by the FC. As regards the new quarters of the CAD, the audit noted that there were deviations from the approved items and deviation from circulars and manuals. In Chapter 3, paragraph 6.2 of Chapter 3, it's agreed that the project is very complicated and the timetable was pressing. We have to comply with aviation requirements and reserve sufficient space for future development. And the construction works have to be completed within a time frame. But these shouldn't be excuses for the various problems pointed out by the audit. As the Bureau Director, I attach importance to deviations from policies. I asked the Director of Civil Aviation to carry out the recommendations in the report. These include the compilation of internal guidelines for staff members to take in the recommendations of the audit and lessons learned. And compliance culture should be cultivated. The CAD was also asked to, in relation to the problems pointed out by the audit report and the processes leading to those problems, make an improvement. As regards the problems related to ATC system, aviation safety and efficiency were the major objectives of replacing the system, which was a complicated and integrated system. Full tests have to be conducted to ensure safety and reliability and stability. We should comply with the latest international standards as well as the standards set by the CAD. There shouldn't be any error. ATC systems are not normal systems. Supervision of installation and testing must comply with the highest aviation standards, and we must take into account the latest technological advancements to ensure safety, stability, and reliability. We're concerned about the ATC systems. In the audit report, it said that there were delays to the installation of the systems. So we're concerned about the reliability of the continued use of the existing services. We would urge the CAD to urge the contractor to continue to rectify the remaining problems and to make sure that the remaining items of the contract would be completed without delay. The CAD is strictly monitoring all the systems to ensure that before commissioning, all systems would be safe and reliable. I attach huge importance to the criticism of the audit. The CAD headquarters, by and large, comply with the needs of the department and comply with international standards. And all the works items were completed within the timetable and the approved budget. But in carrying out the works of the new headquarters, the CAD did have problems and should make improvement. After submitting a detailed report to the audit by the CAD, we will understand all the details of the incident. Then we'll see, apart from those mentioned by the audit report, there were other improvement items to be made. We'll follow established procedures to follow them up and carry out administrative or disciplinary action if necessary. As for the replacement and upgrading of the AD systems, I've asked the CAD to grasp time well and make safety and reliability the first and foremost objectives. Now I'll ask the Director of Civil Aviation as well as the Director of Architectural Services to say a few words to you. CAD. The CAD accepts all the recommendations in the audit report and is grateful for their suggestions. We immediately adopted effective measures to enhance internal management to comply with the instructions and recommendations of the audit report. I'd like to take the opportunity to say that our staff members understand the importance of compliance. As regards the CAD new quarters, the procurement of furniture and office space, etc., those were mapped out in accordance with our needs. To the staff of our department, the new CAD headquarters is a brand new construction item. The whole project was completed on schedule, and we worked within our budget. Yet I have to admit that our staff members didn't have sufficient experience to handle such special items. In the audit report, certain non-compliance items were pointed out. It's because the relevant colleagues lacked certain experience and knowledge in compliance. As the director, I have the responsibility of supervision. The audit report also points out that for major procurement items, cost analysis, follow-up on cross-border navigation devices, as well as the database, we had learned lessons from this incident and have improved our efficiency and effectiveness. Now, I'd like to go to the rectification that we've carried out and the latest progress. Concerning Part 2 of Chapter 3, in relation to the reserved space for future development, we admit that in handling the 1,500 square meters of reserved space, there was deficiency. We should submit comprehensive documents and latest information to the LegCo. We've already updated our procedural manual and informed the related personnel. At the moment, we're liaising with the CSTDI to arrange for works personnel to take part in training programs. I believe members have noted the paragraph 2.2 of the audit report, which points out that the PVC in October approved 926 square meters among 1,500 square meters proposed to accommodate the increased number of staff members. This indicates that space has to be reserved for future development and expansion of the CAD. The ASD and CAD thought that we should have reserved space for that, and that's pragmatic and cost effectiveness. As regards the remaining 574 square meters, we sought help from the GPA. Before we know the long-term use, other government departments will be using that space. For the time being, the CAD will closely collaborate with the GPA. As regards Part 3 of Chapter 3, deviation from the schedule of accommodation, the audit pointed out that for 3 items there were non-compliance, including the washroom and showering facilities, multi-purpose room, and restroom. Last year, when the media inquired about the facilities, we reinspected the schedule of accommodation and discovered the non-compliance. With the consent of the CPA, in December 2003, the Director's Office changed the showering facilities into a storeroom, and the door was permanently sealed. As regards the restroom for the investigators, we're now seeking advice such that on the basis of cost effectiveness, we could comply with the PVC's original intention of providing rest space for investigators. As regards the provision of equipment and furniture, for the operation needs of the LED devices, we carried out a comprehensive device and applied for approval from the Financial Services and Treasury Bureau. With consent from the Bureau, we'll consult the Logistics Department to redeploy the LED devices to other departments. As for Chapter 4, Administration of the Air Traffic Control and Related Services, we accepted the audit report that there was not overspending. Aviation safety has always been our first and foremost task, so we have to strictly comply with all the requirements before we commission the equipment. We'll urge the contractor to handle the remaining problems and supervise the remaining items in the contract to reduce delay. As regards the aging of the existing system, we've already enhanced our repair and maintenance services to ensure that the system could be used until the new system is in place. As regards runway surveillance and its management, in future, when we have major items, we'll enhance assessment, including risk assessment and reliability tests. Now, that was established 20 years ago. We would try to upgrade the runway capacity. Before the radar system can be fully used, we have been continuously enhancing our administration of air traffic control and related services. In the past 16 years, the runway capacity has started from 31 flights per hour to 66 flights per hour this year, and this will be further upgraded to 68, exceeding the 1994 estimation of 63 flights per hour. Finally, in Chapters 3 and 4 of the Audit Report number 63, there were recommendations. As the main official in charge, I would make sure that we'll comply with all guidelines. The CAD will actively carry out all the recommendations in the audit report. I'll closely liaise with the relevant bureaus and departments to carry out the related measures. Thank you. Thank you. Director of Architectural Services, Mr. Chairman, members, the role of the ASD is to manage projects. Before a project commences, we'll do technical assessment to assist departments to spell out all the specifications, and will also take part in the tendering exercise. After the contract is signed, we'll monitor quality, progress, and expenditure. As regards Chapter 3 of the audit report, the ASD agrees with the content and recommendations of the report. As for improvement measures, the ASD will continue to ensure continuous improvement. From May to July, we carried out a number of improvement items. First of all, the PVC has already reminded departments to submit reports to the PVC in time. Secondly, from May 2014, electronic forms have been used to handle fitting out processes and procedures of buildings. The system can approve specifications to check whether there's compliance with the schedule of accommodation. We'll every now and then assess the effectiveness of the system. Thirdly, we've upgraded our management manual to add in test points to ensure that responsible colleagues will follow up items in a timely manner. The ASD will actively follow up on the recommendations of the PAC and the audit, and will arrange sharing sessions for staff members. We'll also arrange training programs for all colleagues to learn lessons from the incident. My colleagues and I are willing to take questions from members. Thank you.
Before I ask Mr. Kenneth Leung to ask questions, let me quickly go through why we require the Secretary of the Bureau to appear. Because for this, in the PAC, we would like to find out the actual reasons so as to prevent future reoccurrence of these problems. So this involves a governance. It's not just to get a report from the audit. We also aim at enhancing governance. We would like to know whether the relevant department and bureau have performed well. Yes, in 1997, a sum was approved. You did not overspend, and the project was completed on schedule. But we're talking about Article 73(2) of the Basic Law. That is, we are responsible for approving budget of the administration. And it's not just about that monetary sum. You have to tell us what was encompassed in the project. You did not come to us when you ended up building more. It's not about the funding approval. It's about our respective duties, us as the Legislative Council. That's why we ask as Secretary you to come to this meeting, because we urge you to enhance governance, because it is very important. I know you're very busy. You don't need to attend for Chapter 4. So if you have other business to attend to, then you don't have to be with us for Chapter 4. It's rather technical. I hope you will learn from this and gain experience so that you will not give a free rein to your departments. We understand that there are many departments under you. And I thank David and his colleagues for compiling the report. They have drawn our attention to the crux of the problem. Mr. Leung. Well, apart from governance or looking forward, there is another important issue. As we know that, runway 3 is going to take place soon, so we have to clarify all the problems before we make our decision about the approval of the third runway. I'm a lead member. I would like to start on a macro level. I hope that we will be able to complete Chapter 3 in the morning. Let's look at the report. It's page 6 is photographs in color. It depicts different blocks of the new complex, the new CAD headquarters, blocks A to F. Can you tell me that in relation to this $1.97 billion, are they for all 6 blocks A to F? You'll find a figure in page 7 of the English report. About the $1.9 billion is for all the blocks A to F. You can see on figure 1 that Tung Fai Road is not part of the project. I would like to refer you to Section 2 about the reserved space, Part 2. The schedule of accommodation, Chart 1 on page 10. I heard from the Bureau that this project was within budget, $1.97 billion, and also it is on a schedule. So when the Finance Committee vetted the proposal, where we supplied all the information, you find in Chart 1 processing of schedule of accommodation. I would like to first clarify that the PVC, that is the Property Vetting Committee, is chaired by the GPA, the Government Property Administrator, with members comprising from the FSTB and the ASD. First, I'd like to know, well, does it require all members to agree before a decision is made, or you only need 2 out of the 3 parties? Perhaps I will say a few words before I defer to the Director for ASD. This project was completed on schedule and within budget. But as I said in my opening remarks, I attach a lot of importance on the due process, and as the Chairman said, the importance of governance, good governance. Yes, as I pointed out, there are deviations in the approved scope and also the procedures. We have to learn from it and improve from that. And my colleagues will elaborate more. Mr. Leung, Director, please refer to R13, R63, Info 3, that is in relation to the $1.997 billion. You may refer to that to answer Mr. Leung's question. When we seek funding approval, it is done in accordance with the financial circular, which lists out the scope of the different departments. The ASD is responsible for the drafting of the original document, and the user department will provide background information and scope of the project. Then the Policy Bureau will vet the document before it's given to the PWSC or the FC for funding approval. Let me say that we have listed out the planned area, construction area, which is 65,000 square meters, which will require $1.9 billion. You will find the information in the bundle. Mr. Law, would you like to answer? Because you are the Director General of the CAD. When you came to the LegCo for funding approval, did you understand that? Did you know the details, Mr. Leung? Yes, I did, Mr. Low. Yes, I did. I knew the construction area, and I knew that I knew about the project cost. It's not 65,000 square meters. Not just about the 65,000 square meters. I was asking you. I drew your attention to the document because I wanted to ask you whether you knew about the details of the project. Yes, I did. So you confirm, yes, Mr. Leung. Well, I think, Chairman, you have moved on to another area, but never mind. I will ask about the 65,000 square meters. It says in the proposal, out of the 65,000 square meters, how much was the reserved area? Out of 65,000, we have reserved for future expansion, as pointed out, and is 3,239.3 square meters, as pointed out in the report. After the audit investigation, the 65,000 square meters include 15,000 square meters, but that 15,000 is not in the table that you find on page 15. So only the 3,200 square meters, but well, is included in the 65,000, which the 15,000 is also included in the construction area. So you've treated the 15,000 as part of the project, not reserved. And you have already incorporated the 1,500 square meters in the project, as part of the project. Well, it appeared in the electrical paper because the personnel responsible for the project considered this and thought that the 1,500 square meter was for unspecified uses, so it cannot be reflected in the net operating floor area. Perhaps I will defer to the ASD. Director for ASD, anything to add? Well, in the paper, you'll find 65,000 square meters. The fact is that the 1,500 square meter for expansion is not listed. As Mr. Low said, one of the reasons why it wasn't listed might be because the approved area, if you refer to chart 1, an approval is required from the PVC. The PVC had to look at the existing establishment and existing facilities and the additional strength and new facilities required for expansion. The PVC would only approve the additional increase in manpower and facility after we've got funding approval. The expansion area of 3,240 was approved because there was policy in place and there was approved funding. And for the additional 1,500 square meters, at the time of the vetting, the understanding was that the ASD and the CAD both thought that is approved, this 1,500 square meters. That's why they did not elaborate about the increase in manpower and facility. The more you said, the less I understand. So we have 1,500 square meters reserved area. Well, you did not know how this 1,500 is to be used. That's why it wasn't listed out, and you incorporated it into 65,000 as part of the approved project. If you refer to table 3, that is page 23, this 1,500 square meters are scattered over different levels, dozens on each floor. Say, for example, first and second floor, 72 and 53 square meters. So it is just bits all over different floors. The 1,500 square meters, majority of them, 1,541, was over block C, and 159 was in the facility block. There are two facility blocks. So 155, are they in the lower block or the higher block of the facility block? Mr. Leung. In table 3, you'll find that the 1,500 square meter was scattered over office and training block and facilities block. You'll find the actual distribution in this table. If you allow, please, if you allow me, I will elaborate on the situation back then. Please refer to paragraphs 2.4 to 2.6. Please continue. In 2.4, 2.5 and 2.6, it was about what happened. And in 2.4, it says that in April 2007, the CAD submitted a draft schedule of accommodation for PVC's approval. And in 2007 September, the CAD and the THB on top of the requirements in April 2007 asked for 1,500 square meter more for a future expansion. And that's the background you'll find in paragraphs 2.4 and 2.5. In 2.6, you'll find that in October 2007, the PVC gave an approval. There are two parts. A of 2.6, the NOFA, the net office floor operating floor area was 22,775 square meters. And in B, that the GPA noted that the panel on economic development urged the provision of additional space for future expansion. As a result, the GPA had no objection to include in the schedule of accommodation the expansion requirements based on CAD's operational plan for this project. It's because of this that the ASD and the CAD both believed that the 1,500 square meters additional expansion space was approved. Mr. Leung. That's not how I see it. So if the approved area is the 2,775 square meters, if you refer to table 2 of the report, that is on page 15, you will find the distribution of the floor area 3,239 is for future expansion. It's not so. The 1,500 is excluded. You said that paragraphs 2.4 to 6 it was about what happened. I want to ask something about 2.5. That the CAD asked for an additional 1,500 from the GPA. Where can we find the information? I would like to defer to the CAD because we may not have all the documents. Mr. Low, I would like to draw members' attention to paragraph 2.16 on page 21. The person who prepared the paper considered this point. It says that on the 8th of October 2007, the CAD advised the THB that it would suffice to inform members that adequate provision for future expansion had been made as the cost for such provision would not be significant. I go on.
And the proposed funding of $1.997 billion was for the construction of 22,775 square meters NOVA, and additional space had been earmarked to cater for the replacement of the new ATC system in the future and future expansion requirements arising from the growth in air traffic. That means 22,775 square meters NOVA plus some additional space. So my understanding is that the colleague in question did not try to conceal any fact from LegCo. And coming back to the table in page 14, I agree with Mr. Kenneth Leung that although the figure did not appear in this table, at that time the project staff did consider whether to include the figure in this table, because the 3,240 square meters area was included as other facilities. If 1,500 square meters were also included in the table, had it been done, it could have addressed members' concerns. But since the space was only reserved for future expansion with an increase in establishment, and I reckon that had it been included, the PVC would not have approved. Now, about the para 2.16 and table 2 on page 15, in fact, the two procedures are different. In approving the schedule of accommodation, the CAD in the process requested for an additional 1,500 square meters. My question was, in which paper was this request included? And the THB indicated support for the CAD's request as shown in this report. So, does the department know what support it is referring to? Does it refer to specifically the increase or area for expansion or otherwise? And in 2007, there was a policy report to the panel on economic development in 2007, and that $1.997 billion was proposed for the construction of 22,000 square meters NOVA. However, there was no mentioning of the reserved space. So that's the crux of my question. Any idea? Yes? Chairman, perhaps I should respond to Mr. Leung's question on the THB support indicated in 2007. In paragraph 2.5 of the audit report, according to the letter written to the PVC by the THB indicating support, in fact, the wording was as follows. At that time, it was believed that in order to cope with air traffic growth beyond 2025, it is anticipated the CAD would also be expanded, and then the THB explored whether a possible increase of 6% GPA would be possible, which is approximately 1,500 square meters, without affecting construction costs, etc. It was asked whether provisions could be made in the building's foundation and design to provide flexibility for expansion in future. So at that time, it was understood that the 1,500 square meters space was not specified for any office or other uses, but it would be treated as an overall reserve space for future expansion without causing significant increase in construction costs. Yes, I heard the Secretary's answer, and in paragraph 5 of 2.5, it says to make provisions in the foundation and design. It doesn't mean that something could be built on it. It only said that something should be done to the foundation, for example, to have another level or to improve the foundation. So I hope the ASD could tell me something about it. To make provisions in the building's foundation and design to provide flexibility. It doesn't mean that the 1,500 square meters could be used in the construction. Am I right? It only says that it should make a provision in the foundation and design. Mr. Leung, at that time, we understood the TPB's memo, which was very clear, that provisions should be made in the foundation and design. And perhaps let me supplement. In para 2.6, the PVC, in the GPA, in completing vetting the draft schedule of accommodation, informed the CAD and the PVC by a memorandum. And there were misunderstandings arising from the memorandum. In 2.6a, it states the supported NOVA requirement was 22,775 square meters. And then point B, noting the requirement of the electrical panel on economic development, the the GPA had no objection to include the schedule of accommodation, the expansion requirements based on CAD's operational plan for this project. So, because of these 2 points in the memorandum, we understood. Our understanding was that the 1,500 square meters requirement was also approved. Dr. Kenneth Leung, just a brief follow-up. So there are two assumptions. I won't say it's a deliberate concealment, but if you refer to the to Table 2, if you have no idea how the 1,500 square meters will be used, and if you just break it down and put the area under ABC, then in the first column you can just add 1,500 square meters, and that's it. Rather than not letting anyone know how the 1,500 square meters would be used. Okay, I will give other members more time to ask questions. Next member in queue, Ellen Leung, and Mok Yuk Man, and Gary Chen. Raymond Wong should go first. All right, thank you, Chairman. Today we have a politically appointed official, our secretary, and also director general and director of departments here. Now, about the CAD headquarters and the incident and the related incident, it's basically a scandal, and the government officials should step down. It's not just value for money audit by the audit commission. This is a scandal, and the secretary and the directors should step down. However, in Hong Kong, the situation is very peculiar. Officials can only be promoted, not they won't be asked to step down. Professor Zhang, you should step down for your lack of monitoring. We have cost overruns for XRL. We have such a mess as far as our transportation systems concerned, and infrastructure projects as well. Well, yes, you are. You have made admissions, but, well, Chairman, honestly, this is a scandal. A shower in the office of Director General, the Director General's office, and dozens of large LCD video display units. Well, this is just a scandal. The public would really feel outrageous. Yesterday, we were talking about long-term care for our elderly and their illnesses, and it was suggested that it's easy to just go to heaven rather than waiting for a place. And now you spend money to build a private shower facility in your office. Well, if it isn't a scandal, what is it? The director of ASC should step down. You too. You too. So let's save our breath. How can they be accountable to the public? This is outrageous. Of course, we've prepared a lot of questions. We've tried to dig out details. And every time the same happens, the audit report finds out deficiencies, and you accept the recommendations. In fact, a few months ago, the whole incident has already been exposed in the Oriental Daily. Well, the CAD spent $2 billion in building an extravagant CAD headquarters, and also altered space without approval. And the new headquarters have become a luxurious clubhouse, and all government officials should bear responsibility for the use of public money in such a manner. Well, Secretary, I really have to do some calculations with you. Every time when something happens like this, in a government department, you would say that, well, the construction has been completed and the video display units have been procured. Well, we can see if it can be returned to the supplier, so on and so forth. Well, looking at your speaking notes, you have to admit that you have committed very serious mistakes. we spent so much time in holding public hearings and compiling reports. So, Professor Zhang, why didn't you admit that you were ineffective in your monitoring efforts? So it's a problem with the system. 3 years. In a 3 years period, so many ridiculous facilities, karaoke room, VIP rooms, shower facilities. In para 2.4 to 2.10 of part 2, about the departure from the approved schedule of accommodation. Well, perhaps Dr. Kenneth Leung also touched upon this issue just now. The PVC approved the CAD, a reserved area of 3,240 square meters for future expansion. But apart from this 3,000 square meters plus space, the CAD took the initiative to reserve another 1,500 square meters without informing the PVC. Altogether, 4,470 square meters were reserved. And then the THB was informed. The THB then informed the GPA. I'd like to know how the CAD communicated with the Secretary for Transport and Housing. And please show us all the correspondences. What was the understanding of the GPA at the time? What was the understanding of the ASD at the time? The question is, we'd like to have the relevant papers first. Please answer the first questions. We can follow up on the other issues. Chairman, at that time, I wasn't secretary then. So, of course, as far as papers are concerned, we can retrieve the records. And the CAD did approach the THB for policy support, and the THB then indicated support as shown in para 2.5 of the audit report. Well, just now, Mr. Wong said that in my speaking notes I let myself off very lightly, but that is not the case. We do require the CAD to submit a very detailed report. If in 2007 the officers involved, not necessarily the officers attending this hearing here, they would be penalized according to the established system. I'm not happy with his reply, but let's not waste time. You're just trying to explain yourself away. In fact, the ASD knew in advance that the schedule of accommodation approved did not include the 1,500 square meters reserved space. According to the papers, in 2.12d is understood that support had been given, and is it the ASD or the PVC which is responsible for approving the schedule of accommodation? We have three directors here. It is the PVC which approved the schedule of accommodation, and the GPA would or the ASD would undertake the project according to the approved schedule of accommodation. And I want to supplement that we had a misunderstanding at the time. It was clearly stated in the approved schedule of accommodation that the approved NOVA should be 22,775 square meters with a reserved space of 1,500 square meters, which was understood to be approved. So that accounted for the additional 1,500 square meters reserved space on top of the 3,000 plus square meters. Now it's proved to be wrong. The additional 1,500 square meters is wrong. Please answer me. You said that it was approved, but it's wrong, right? Yes, please explain to us, as members of the public would be hearing your explanation here. about the net operational floor area is 22,775 square meters. That was the approved NOVA. Was there an addition of 1,500 square meters or not? Please explain to us. No, it's not included. The 1,500 square meters reserved space for future expansion was not included in the 22,775 square meters. So the 22,700 and as in table 1, some 1,900 plus some 3,000 area provided for expansion. It makes up for 22,775, but the 1,500 square meters were not included. So the approval was wrongly given to the 1,500 square meters. Secretary, please answer me. Was it wrong? Was it necessary? For the 1,500 square meters for future expansion in 2007, the THB then thought that support should be given as in para 2.55. The THB was of the view that if provisions could be made in the building's foundation and design to provide flexibility for this in future, that the THB would indicate its support. So, in retrospect, at that time, without clear approval given by the GPA, definitely there was an omission. I'm sorry, Secretary, not an omission. It's a deliberate error. It's a mistake. Now, in 2.15c, the paper says as follows. In the audit report, it shows that there were different understanding, and it highlighted the risk that these papers could be subject to different interpretation. One party is responsible for giving advice, the other is responsible for giving approval. So the division of work was very clear. It's questionable whether the CAD is trying to reap benefit out of it. For the the 1,500 square meters was not included in the newly approved schedule of accommodation. So, and the PVC was totally helpless. You always talk about Hong Kong being the international aviation hub. Does it mean that the CAD can have all the say? Maybe the CAD could decide how the construction should be carried out. Can you please explain whether the papers do show that you have looked into this matter? Well, let me supplement. The GPA and the PVC, having read through the CAD's application and with the THB's support for reserving 1,500 square meters for future expansion, and having considered the relevant electrical panels support for space to be reserved for expansion, ultimately, we approved 22,775 square meters NOVA, the breakdown of which was eventually submitted to the CAD.
就係3240，咁呢個呢就係冇包括另外仲有1500。
3240 did not include 1500 here. Well, just now there was confusion. You have approving procedures before you go to the PWSC. According to the documents, this 1500 square meters did not exist. And then the FC followed the papers you submitted to the PWSC before approving the $1.9 billion. And the $2 billion are already detailed in Table 1. Just now you mentioned you went to a number of committees and obtained consent. But even with those consent, it doesn't mean that you could add items to the approved project, and you did not go back to the PWSC or the FC to further elaborate. So for the 22775, you have to bear in mind that the approved budget is $2 billion. But that doesn't mean that you could spend the $2 billion casually and randomly. And you did not explain to the Bureau Director the conditions discussed in FC. So it's very simple. We don't need to argue. You just give us the documents. The Director of Audit and his colleagues already said that there were no documents. You did not observe the procedures. So that's a mistake, as Mr. Wong Yok-man said. These were not omissions, so don't argue. We're not arguing. We just want to clarify the fact. The fact is indeed that back then, consent should be obtained from the PVC, and you're correct just now. At that time, the administration should have submitted a supplementary paper to the PWSC and the FC. You're correct. Even with the approved estimates, it doesn't mean that we could go it casually and randomly. Mr. Wong Yok-man, well, at that time, you're not the Bureau Director. Still, you have to inherit the so-called sins. Professor, you cannot say here that this is not your business. I'm speaking very loudly and you feel very unhappy, but you have to inherit the sins. This is now your duty. Well, you have to bear this mistake. So we have to clarify the whole incident. Chairman, we're targeting the incident itself. But then when we discuss the incident, we have to discuss the professor who always gave us the impression that he's very able and competent. And for 2.24, well, let me finish this question. In 2014, you're already the Bureau Director then. 2014, were you then the Bureau Director? I think so. It's this year. How the CAD use the 1,500 square meters of additional reserve area. Well, you can read 2.21 and 2.22. However, the CAD had not provided a full account of how the reserve space of 3,240 square meters. And then the audit's field visits in July 2014 revealed the sum of the 3,240 square meters reserve space had not been fully utilized. Examples included the expansion areas of 200 square meters for trial equipment room and 305 square meters for operational evaluation and human-machine interface development on the ground and second floors of the office and training block. Audit also noted that the relocation of the entire air traffic management division to the area ATC center might take place in 2015. After the relocation, some 1,960 square meters of NOVA would be vacated in the old ATC center. In Audit's view, there's a need for an overall review of the space utilization of the CAD premises, taking into account timing and operational requirements. And the space should be made available to other users. Hundreds of square meters in this room only had a table and a chair in it. And for the 1,500 square meters, apart from this additional reserve area, you also had additional furniture. So what's that 1,500 square meters for? Just for one table and one chair. Wasn't that absurd? Please answer my question. And then in 2.24, we have space not utilized. Well, Director General, what about those 3,240 square meters reserved space? Was that for the CAD? Would you please explain to Yokman? And why didn't you use the 3240? From the documents, we can see very clearly the uses of 3240. So why didn't you make use of it? Would you please tell us the history of all these, including the 1500 square meters? Just tell us the history. How did all these come about? Director General, thank you, Chairman. Let me answer members' questions. If I may refer you to Table 2 for the 3239 for reserved space for future expansion is distributed among B and C for ATC equipment. So the reserved space is for the ATC equipment, and we needed time. Of course, that building wasn't totally commissioned yet, and we had to observe the ICAO's international aviation development projects. We had to carry out tests, and we needed some equipment. Therefore, for reserved space left unused, they are not totally unused. The Air Control Center, after commissioning, if its operations prove to be smooth, we have to upgrade the existing equipment of the ATC center. And equipment and facilities had already been placed in the 3,240 square meters of reserved space. As for the remaining space, under certain circumstances, the space would be used for training-related uses. So basically, although we're not using the 3,240 square meters of reserved space continuously, we had placed quite some equipment there. The equipment is for Phase 2 development, and wherein when necessary, the equipment is used for training at the moment. Mr. Chairman, I'm very dissatisfied with his answer. He's going round and round without arriving anywhere. He's preparing for the future. Well, for 2.24, where is the timetable? When are you going to have training for the 3,240 square meters? You must give us a timetable, and we need the progress schedule. Otherwise, you reserve the space which is to be used. You cannot just say that you are reserving area for future development, and then you told us office equipment would be put therein. Where is the time schedule? You now have sufficient space. You mentioned the future ATC center. I'll do some calculation with you in the afternoon. So, where is the time schedule? What are the standards for using the equipment and facilities? Well, there are just too many documents. Bureau Director and the Director and DG. May I refer you to the PWSE papers? R63/3/Info 8. On the 21st of December 2007, when you submitted the whole project to the PWSA, Ms. Emily Lau and I asked you to explain why you needed to use the 3,240 square meters as well as and then on the 21st of September 2007, you also gave us a table. The figure just now was 22,775. And then in the supplementary paper submitted to the PWSC in January 2008, in a table, you gave us the information on the 3,239 square meters. In September 2007, you already understood that you would have this 1,500 square meters. But then in January 2008, in your paper to the LegCo, well, a number of members are still here. Mr. Leong was also a member of the then PWSC. I think he was the deputy chairman then. And you did not mention this 1,500 square meters. You came here, we spent a great deal of time to read your papers. You could not just refrain from telling us the detailed circumstances. That's why Yokman asked you for the details clearly. Why were such loopholes in those papers? In September 2007, you already knew of the incident. We asked you in December. In January, you replied to our questions. There's no transparency. In your paper submitted to the LegCo, you seem to be putting forth a clear explanation. Is there conspiracy here? We really want to know what happened among the departments. So please read the papers clearly before you answering our questions. Mr. Leong? Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, why are we so concerned about this 1,500 square meters? It's because if we attach importance to our systems, if we attach importance to rules and regulations, then this incident is an example of destroying systems and rules and regulations. A classic example of all classic examples. Why are we so saddened? For the SARG, particularly in the 2 years of governance of C.Y. Leung, all rules and regulations and systems fell apart. If we can allow a DG of civil aviation to casually and randomly decide how to use this 1,500 square meters of reserve space for future and turned it into a space for the present, that is changing the future tense to present tense, then it's actually an example of the DG overriding systems and rules and regulations. That's why the LegCo is adopting a most solemn attitude in handling the reasons given for this 1,500 square meters. Just now, the controlling officer, the Director of Architectural Services, gave a speech. And the starter of all these errors, the DG of Civil Aviation, Mr. Norman Low, also spoke, were saddened by their speeches. I think the speech of the Bureau Director sounded more appropriate. At least he had the dignity of an official under the accountability system. I think this is the minimum requirement of the PAC. If Mr. Norman Low, the DG of Civil Aviation, and Mr. Leung Kun Kei, the Director of Architectural Services, want to shirk their responsibilities by passing the buck elsewhere, as a PAC member, I can firmly tell these two officials that you won't get what you want. Definitely. This is an important duty of the PAC of the LegCo. Will definitely not be lazy. You, all of you, must be held accountable. By way of this public hearing, we will disseminate a very clear message to the public of Hong Kong. The PWSA of the LegCo and the Finance Committee of the LegCo are important constitutional gatekeepers. The LegCo's PAC is to monitor the administration in honoring the provisions in the Basic Law and were the frontline gatekeepers. Mr. Chairman, just now you asked a question. In 2007, on the 21st of December, Friday, at 2:30 p.m., in the LegCo building, conference room A, we had a PWSC meeting under the FC, and we have these minutes of the 5th meeting. Those present include those who are present today, the Director General of Civil Aviation, Mr. Norman Low. In paragraph 20 of the minutes, I hope that Mr. Low will pay special attention to it. Now, we got an answer from you in relation to questions from PWSC members. You said then that all CAD existing facilities, a floor area of 9191 square meters. Breakdowns, office 3068 square meters, 8 air traffic control facilities, 3422 square meters, other facilities 2712 square meters. CAD new headquarters, NOFA, about 22775 square meters. Chairman, these figures are also in Table 2 of the audit report. So the table was actually copied from that paper, and the figures therein are the same. NOFA breakdown figures. Office 3428 square meters, air traffic control facilities 10923 square meters, other facilities 8424 square meters. The CAD said that the 10923 square meters include the estimated air traffic requirement of 9,000 square meters up to 2025 and the 1,000 square meters of reserve space. And then the DGCA further explained how the dispersed CAD officers would be relocated.
Chairman, I would like to emphasize that this took place in December 21st, 2007. And let's look at the audit report. In October 2007, that is 2 months before the PWSC meeting, apart from the schedule of accommodation, the approved facilities, and the design and build a contract Under employer's requirement, the CAD specified that the 1,500 square meter reserved area should be part of the established office. And I now ask the DG of the CAD, Mr. Norman Low, why 2 months before the PWSC you already set out in the employer's requirement that the 1,500 square meters that were supposed to be for the future expansion, something that is already established. And why did you not mention about this 1,500 square meters in the PWSC meeting? Mr. Low. I think the director of the ASD mentioned a number of times that at that time the ASD and the CAD had misunderstood the situation. We thought that 22775 square meters was approved by effect of the memo of the ASD, and it included the area for future expansion. And in 2.16, paragraph 2.16 of the audit report, I explained before, and please let me explain again. Chairman, if Mr. Norman Low only wanted to repeat what the excuse he used before, he could save his breath. I don't want to hear it again. Mr. Low, please understand what you said and what Mr. Leung said, that is the reserved 3239.3 square meters was the only area reserved for expansion. That is clearly stated in the LegCo document. The 1,500 was never included in the 2274.4 or the 3,239.3 square meters. Please don't waste my time. I want an answer. I've drawn your attention to all the documents in 2007 September. You wanted the 1,500 square meters, and you... Sorry, I said it wrong. We're talking about 15,000 square feet, so it's a large area. You can see from the photographs. In September, you went to the Bureau Secretary, and in October, there was a meeting, and on the 21st of December, there was a PWSC meeting, and members asked questions, and in January, Mr. Leung asked you why it happened. Don't talk about 2.16, because even in paragraph 2.16 there was no explanation about why the 1,500 square meter did not appear. And over the number of dates I gave you, you've already had meetings. I just want to find out the truth. Please tell us clearly. Don't dodge the question, because we have already got all the papers and we're very familiar with the information thereon. We just want to find out the truth, what actually happened. Can you please answer Mr. Leung? Well, I can only give you an answer after the fact. What I could do was to answer based on the information in Table 2 of the audit report. The PVC already approved the NOFA, and that's the only way I can answer. And on the 3rd of October, CAD submitted the entire document to the ASD. I did not know about the content, the actual content. I could only, based on the table of the PVC answer questions. And the colleagues of the CAD and the ASD understood the information differently. I think there was no intent to mislead the LegCo. And in the panel on economic development, 22,775 was mentioned, and there was also additional reserved space. It's just that 1,500 did not appear in the document. And I think the CAD has learned a lesson. In all future documents submitted to the LegCo, we will set out all the latest information. DG, as I said, in September, there was a document given to the THB, and in October there was an internal meeting, and in November you went to the panel of economic development. You asked for a bit more on top of the 22,775, and in December in the PWSC meeting, as Mr. Leung asked, you already told the panel in October that you wanted additional space, but you did not elaborate. And in January, in reply to our questions, you did not set out certain information. You couldn't answer Mr. Leung's question. You either eat humble pie or well, admit your mistakes. You can't dodge the question. How come that the 1,500 square meter was not included? May I ask follow-up question? Please do. I heard Mr. Norman Low. I don't know if I heard him right. He said when he attended the meeting on the 21st of December 2007, the PWSC meeting, he did not know. He said he did not know. I think I heard him right. He said he did not know that 2 months prior to that, in October, under employer's requirement, 1,500 square meter has already been turned into something of the present. Is that what you said? And in November, when you went to the ED panel, well, I would ask about that later, but I now focus on PWSC. Just now, what I heard in your answer was that you did not know. That's why you could only answer based on the approved area of the PVC. Is that what you said? Yes, indeed, I did not know at that time. May I follow up? You are the DG of the CAD. And what we understand now is that when the decision-making organization structure, well, it's according to paragraph of the THB secretary, it says that with support of the THB, the CAD would delineate the scope of the project. Whose phone is it? Is it Mr. Kenneth Leung? Please continue. It's page 2 of the Secretary's speech. And then conduct public consultation on the proposal. DG. your responsibility is to delineate the scope of the project. However, what you say now is that when you attended the PWSC meeting, you did not know that 2 months before that there was a submission of the employer's requirement turning the 1,500 square meter into something of the present. This is a dereliction of duty on your part. Mr. Low. There was a unit set up in the CAD that is responsible for the project. Yes, it's a mistake of the DG, and I am responsible for I'm responsible for supervision. We were on a tight schedule. We had to take into account the project and the 5 divisions under me. Looking back, I should have monitored the project more closely, and I am, in part responsible for the supervision of this project. However, there was a large amount of documents to consider. And very often, the subdivision of the project would liaise with other departments or divisions. So I wasn't consulted about all the decisions. However, there is a mistake on the part of the CAD, and I am responsible to a certain degree about the supervision duty. So you talk about just to a certain degree of the supervision duty. You are the DG of the CAD. Since you're having so much fun in giving such answers, let me ask you further questions. In your office, there was a toilet shower facilities, and in 2009 May, under employers' requirement, these facilities were put in place. Are you telling me that when it comes to the shower or toilet facilities in your office, you did not even notice? Well, in relation to toilet shower facilities in my office, well, indeed, it was me who mentioned it. Who mentioned it because it was for my operation. It's part of my operation use, because I was responsible for coordination of rescue when it comes to long-range rescue, because our flight region extends to about 600 kilometers southward. I'm part of this rescue team. I don't want any digression. You have a time for explanation in this regard. I'm just trying to ask about the 1,500 square meters. Well, it's a very poor excuse. You are the Director General. In October 2007, that is 2 months before you attended the PWSC meeting, your department, as user, was responsible for delineating the project scope. And that's what the Secretary of the Bureau said. How could you tell us that you did not know that the 1,500 square meter has already been turned into something of the present? If you cannot think of an explanation, then learn from the Secretary, Mr. Anthony Cheung. And this is what he said. This is the attitude I describe as a more dignified stance. He said that he attaches importance about the deviation from procedure. That's all you need to say. What you're doing is now will put you in a more difficult and awkward situation. As I've reminded you previously, the PAC is the front line of the fulfillment of our constitutional duty as a legislature to hold the executive accountable. We will not accept anything that is irresponsible. I think it is a problem or a matter of attitude. You ignore all the rules and regulations. You as the DG would like to have a shower facility and you put it in your room. You like yoga, then you put in place a full-length mirror in a room. And this is completely unacceptable in Hong Kong. I hope that Mr. Low you would seriously reflect on this and reconsider your answer, knowing that it's our constitutional responsibility to hold the executive accountable. DG. There are errors in the construction of the CAD headquarters, and there were deviations from procedures and rules and regulations. I am the DG, so I have to be partly responsible for it. We are the CAD. We are not familiar with works. We have our own work or duties to do. I can only do my best to fulfill my supervisory duty as the DG. I would like to say to the public and members of the PAC that I am sorry because there are indeed mistakes or errors. DG, I would like to ask. Who did the CAD talk to in the GPA and vice versa about the 1,500 square meters? I think, Mr. Leung, you're not solely responsible for it. There must be some correspondence or telephone conversations. So, who is the contact point? We can find out from who talked in these telephone calls and who signed in these correspondence. It's not personal, but we have to look into it. Please give me an answer. We will find the record as best as we can, as far as we know that there were regular meetings. When we're dealing with the project, there will be at least 2 to 3 regular meetings a month. Apart from these regular meetings, there are some ad hoc meetings about special issues. I will find the information in the record. Were you the director? No. In 2007, I was in a different unit. So who attended the meetings? Who wrote these letters?
I have to find the relevant records. Yes, please show us the relevant minutes and the officials in attendance. GPA. Chairman, we do keep records of the relevant information, and it's also accepted in the audit's report. As for the names of officials attending the meetings, they're all recorded. But you were not the director, right? No, I wasn't in GPA. Chairman, I have finished the questions I have to ask with this part, and I support the Chairman's way of handling the meeting, because the purpose of holding a public hearing is to ensure that in future approvals of schedule of accommodation, the PVC's operation should be respected. And rules should be implemented. Director, we understand that you have busy schedule. You have a lot of work to do, but when you attend electrical meetings, if you tell us that you're not sure about the papers, follow-up papers to be submitted, then that's unacceptable, because different members asked you questions, Ms. Emily Lau and myself as well, and you explained to us so as to get full support for the $2 billion project in 2007. If you had no idea of what was going on at all, then we're very alarmed. As a Director General attending the electrical meeting, explaining to us a project and seeking our approval for funds, it's really hard for us to believe what a department head or secretary says in future when they apply for funding in electrical. So please give us the relevant papers in your department, because we also like to know how internal meetings are conducted in your department, such that the 1,500 square meters request was made. How did this decision come by? Who made the suggestion? Who was in charge of handling the application? Who made the submission of information? Please go back and find the information. Thank you, Chairman. We have learned a lesson. We are going to submit all the relevant information concerning the discussion of the 1,500 square meters to electrical. Mr. Gary Chen. Chairman, I agree with you. What you said just now, apart from requesting the ASD and the GPA to submit the relevant papers, Mr. Norman Lowe, Director General of CAD, although admitting his responsibilities just now, also had a role to play in this matter, along with his subordinates in the discussion process. So which staff or which official made this suggestion of reserving an additional 1,500 square meters, and how did the government departments interact? I think all these are very important in helping us compile the report. Chairman, many members just now already mentioned that it's not just a question of 1,500 square meters. It's a matter of the system, because it is believed that not a single official would benefit from the extra 1,500 square meters. Nobody would pocket any money from the additional space. But if no approval is given, if the electrical control is circumvented, then the whole system would be broken down. Well, just to quote a simple example, Mr. Leung here would like to be the chief executive. He would wish to be the chief executive, but he would have to follow the system. So in para 2.11, of the report, in response to the questions on the 1,500 square meters extra space, the CAD said that, first of all, electrical also urged the government to ensure sufficient space be reserved. The GPA also did not raise any objection. On these 2 points, he or the department suggested that with the support of the 2 parties, the department should have the reserved space of 1,500 square meters. So that gives an impression that there is no need to follow the established procedures. But now there is an error in your procedure, and hence the major problem here. I hope the relevant officials of CAD would go back and pay attention to these matters in future, because I think for the third runway project there would be similar projects that would commence. So we hope that the mistake will not be repeated. Chairman, I'd like to move on to 2.24. In 2.24, it says that there is an approved reserve space of 3,240 square meters. I think the area is bigger than that of a hotel ballroom. So I find it really strange that only 1 table and 1 chair is placed in the area of 3,240 square meters, whereas you at the same time requested for 1,500 square meters additional reserve area. Instead of maximizing the use of the space you already have, you sought to have an additional 1,500 square meters. So how was the decision made? DG. About 3,240 square meters reserved area. I'd like to defer to my assistant, Mr. Lee. Well, perhaps we can save time here. Mr. Eleanor already asked a similar question about the PWSC, and the answer has been given, and we have all the relevant information now. Perhaps, Gary, we can give you the relevant papers. We can pass you the papers. Next question. Another departure from the procedures, an alteration of the use of space is in para 3.7. In para 3.7, originally 350 square meters were endorsed for education purposes. However, 70 square meters were used to become a dance room. So the visitor lounge or the viewing gallery was not provided, and without the approval from GPA, you made the decision to change its use. Can you explain it? The alteration was made because when designing the control tower simulator, in a training block, the assumption was that the existing control tower simulator was just a bit above the ground level. However, according to the information we got from the manufacturer of the new tower simulator, the new design would be 1 of 3 meters above ground. And training officers must go up from the ground level via the staircase to the control tower simulator. And in terms of its design, some projectors were used, and it's a 360-degree projecting screen as far as the control tower simulator is concerned, such that no entry could be constructed from any side. Access could only be made from the ground level. And originally there was a viewing gallery one level above, so that visitors could view the training progress. However, because of the requirement of the new design, the tower had to be elevated 3 meters above the ground, and then visitors could only view the projectors instead of the training room. So alterations had to be made. And in retrospect, according to what I heard from my staff, it was a collective decision by a number of divisions and the building contractor after discussion. But in retrospect, any alteration of use of the space should be subject to the approval of the GPA, and they had failed to do so. Mr. Leung, can you tell us that in relation to this alteration and the original tender document, was there any change to financial aspect? Because of the major alteration, money would be involved. So how much are we talking about? This is a VO, or would they be allowed to utilize the funds as they wished? Can you explain to us, when there was a design submitted and that when there were alterations to the design to such a great extent, how much funds would be involved? Well, perhaps I can give you a brief answer now, Chairman. For the multi-function room, originally it was supposed to be a viewing gallery, as mentioned by the Director General of CAD just now. The viewing gallery should have allowed visitors to view the training inside the control tower simulator. And then it was known that in the tendering process, the design of the control tower simulator would be different from the existing one. And we did note this issue, and we discussed with the building contractor. Originally, it comprised a huge glass pane through which visitors could view the training inside the tower. And then the glass pane was altered to become solid concrete walls. And in terms of construction costs and the interior design, there wasn't much difference, so we agreed to this change at the time. Chairman, I'm somewhat confused. I'd like Mr. Low to clarify for me. Now, that space, do you think that which do you think is more important, to use the space as a control tower simulator, or for to use as a viewing gallery for visitors? Because as you explained just now, because of the new design, access could only be gained from the ground level, and due to technical reasons, visitors could not view from above. And if you then give up the training off ground, because of that, is it putting the cart before the horse? So the next question is, where are the training sessions held now? Is there another location for the training simulator? Chairman, perhaps I didn't explain very clearly just now. The training simulator is still in operation. The only difference is that now it's 3 meters above ground. Originally, visitors should have been able to view the training through a glass pane above. Now they could only see the projectors. So it has rendered the viewing gallery pointless. In fact, we do have a screen on the wall which shows the training in progress inside the new control tower simulator. But of course, it's not the same as viewing directly the three-dimensional training. So much for me, Chairman, for the time being. Next, Kenneth. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on the training center and the restrooms for accident investigators. Just now, Mr. Lowe's explanation was that because it's 3 meters above the ground, because of the location, the viewing gallery could no longer allow visitors to view any actual operation inside, and it was decided that its use should be altered. Although there was a 3-meter elevation, the area remained the same, 70 square meters. Why hadn't you considered enlarging the simulating facilities? I understand that now the viewing gallery is on the same level as the control tower simulator, so that visitors could not see anything. And you have an extra space of 70 square meters. If you had no idea how to utilize the 70 square meters, why hadn't you consider expanding your training facilities with the extra 70 square meters, since you didn't know what to make of, what to use, or how to use the 70 square meters? From the value for money perspective, it could be used for training purposes. Of course, visitors would no longer be able to view the training process. And I think that it's just a matter of common sense. Why hadn't you thought of that at the time? DG, a question for you. No common sense? Chairman, responding to members' question about the operation of the control tower simulator. This is for the training of 2 posts, air traffic control officers. One is AMC, air movement controller. That is to direct flight aircrafts during takeoff and landing. The other post is aircraft controller. This is to give directions to taxiing aircrafts which have landed until they can safely berth at a place. So we train 4 officers in this simulator in terms of their coordination. So the design of the new control tower simulator was that it could accommodate 4 trainees at the same time under the supervision of 1 trainer. So in terms of its design, we have specified the area. But should we require additional space because of the 3rd runway in future? Not necessarily, because we have 3-part training. One is about knowledge. Well, just now I asked Mr. Leung that as far as value for money audit is concerned, whether it amounted to a waste of money.
Well, members can ask other questions. I clearly heard the DG say that 4 persons were to be trained in that simulator. So you deem that the optimum size and area. But as you had a space of 70 square meters, why didn't you take reference from other training centers elsewhere in the world? When you did not know how to make use of that, you just changed it into a recreation room. I think you did not, as a public officer, enhance the quality of governance. You got this extra 70 meters and didn't know how to make use of it. You consulted certain units and then turned it into a recreation room. I think you did not discharge your duties properly. You did not enhance training facilities and uses. You told me that the optimum size should accommodate, or rather, the area could only accommodate 4 persons only. But you did not tell us that space was up to international standard and is meaningless to further expand that area. Chairman, what about this restroom for the accident investigators? Of course, when there's an accident to be investigated, that would be important. Now, I just want to know how many times had that room been used. Originally, that was to accommodate 23 investigators. I believe there were reasons to that design. I mean 22 investigators. For a major accident, how many investigators would you need? I believe experts will be able to give me the figure. But upon conversion, there are 60 rooms, each with a toilet. Well, I don't think investigators in an emergency would have so much time to go to the toilet. Now, originally, you planned for 22 investigators. Now, with this new space, how many investigators could you accommodate? But in fact, there are hotels near the airport. You didn't really need that room. Just put the investigators in Marriott, airport hotel, and the like. So why do you need this restroom for the investigators? You had not been able to explain yourself. Director General, there are 2 questions. Number 1, we will learn a lesson from this. If we are to modify anything, we should look at efficiency and effectiveness. We only needed 4 training posts. At that time, we did not consider how much money would be required for enlarging the training facility, how much area we needed, etc. We admit that. So in future, if we have a similar project, if there are to be modifications, we don't just need further approval. We ourselves need to conduct a value for money assessment to make sure that the proposal is cost-effective enough. And then for this investigators' room, with the GPA and the PVC, we got vetting approval, and eventually what we did deviated from the approved plans. Indeed, there are mistakes. Sorry, DG, was this room really essential? Well, this investigator's room had been discussed with the GPA for a period of time. Eventually, a room was given to us for the investigators. The investigators' room was divided into 2 parts, one for males and one for females. Indeed, investigators do need a room to rest. Why did we end up with 6? As I explained, the errors. Let me explain why investigators need a room for resting and why should we have 22 investigators at the same time. When there's a major accident, we cannot be certain how many investigators would be required. We have 30-odd experienced investigators in the CAD. They're all professional aircraft engineers, pilots, or experienced air traffic controllers, or they're experienced in other aviation aspects. When there's an accident with aircraft, 70% of such accidents occurred in an airport, according to statistics. And usually, when an accident occurs in an airport, usually the fuselage of the aircraft would be dispersed. So we'll categorize the investigators, some responsible for certain aspects, some responsible for investigating into the causes, and so forth. So circumstances differ. The amount of rest varies. The time of rest also varies. Some investigators may have to work till late at night, and after investigation, the fuselage should be cleared as soon as possible for preservation in a depot for future investigation use. And if anything happens, the items may have to be used as exhibits. So not all the 22 investigators need to go into that room. Maybe just some of them, after working for a while, need to take a rest in that room. So this is actually a common room for all. But some investigators do need to take a rest for longer. Well, a lot of problems can come out from an aircraft. The authorities, the regulators, the engine manufacturers, the designers, etc. And many jurisdictions may be interested in participating in the investigation. And according to the International Convention 13, they should all be accommodated. And many of them fly into Hong Kong, usually with a one-day time lag. So usually they immediately go to the scene upon arrival, they work, and then go back to the investigation base and take a short rest in a facility before going to the hotel. From what I heard, the original design was an open plan, which is easier to use than a room divided up into 6 rooms. With this modification, you ended up being able to accommodate less investigators. And why didn't you make more use of hotels? If somebody needs a rest of 7 to 8 hours, you got the hotels there. Hotel rooms are more comfortable than your rooms. Well, in a restroom, it may be an open plan with comfortable sofa, maybe 10 to 20 sofas with male and female toilets with showering facilities. That will suffice. So internationally, according to international standard, is there such a requirement for a resting room for investigators? If you've exceeded basic requirements, you'd better make use of Regal Airport Hotel, Marriott Hotel, and so forth. They can provide more comfortable rooms. You don't need to construct your own rooms. If an investigator is to stay on for a week, you only need to pay a week's hotel room charge. Mr. Leung was asking those questions from the point of value for money. You provided us with lengthy answers. We allowed you to express your professional opinion, but you did not answer the two questions. Well, the ICAO does not specify that resting rooms be provided as facilities for investigators. For operational needs, many investigators have gone to other jurisdictions for observation. They had observed their large-scale facilities. We fully understand the concept of value for money. Investigators need a room for resting. We view this from a human point of view, from an operational point of view, from a need viewpoint. Investigators have to work in difficult situations. Well, very simple. No matter how good your facilities are, how good facilities you construct, they won't be as good as those provided by hotels. Just let your investigators take a 7 to 8 hour rest in a hotel before bringing them back. You may need a resting room for the investigators, but you don't need these luxurious rooms, 6 of them. I don't know how many people can be accommodated. The GPA approved a large resting room for 22 investigators. They must have reasons for that. So eventually, even if you were to make any change, you should provide a facility for 22 investigators as well. Well, DG, the question is very simple. You're turning 22 into 6 without going back to the GPA, and then you didn't say that you needed a luxurious facility. Of the $2 billion, did you really need to spend the sum of money? If you're the boss, would you spend such sums of money? As the Director General, you're duty-bound to ensure that public money is well spent and spent meaningfully. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your reminder. Even after the alteration, we still wanted to accommodate 22 investigators. You mean they should stay in the same room? When necessary, we might do so. We also provide common restrooms because under the originally approved schedule of accommodation, there was this common facility to handle 22 investigators. So we did have that plan. We did discuss with the FSGB and the PVC. We did examine the issue. You didn't answer the second question. Well, that was long. I forgot it. In the logbook, you have these luxurious rooms, resting rooms. How much you spent on that? Mr. Leung asked you this question much earlier. You didn't answer. We took the initiative to conduct an internal investigation and follow-up. We discovered that the ultimate facility was different from that approved by the PVC. We took the initiative to lock up the 6 resting rooms. Last year, in about summer, there were 2 minor accidents involving aircraft. Well, it might be possible that our colleagues needed to use the room. So those rooms had never been used and you now lock them up. So, in what way was our money spent? Well, these are luxurious rooms, and you now lock them up. So the committed capital has been wasted. You didn't answer me why you didn't use hotels. Why can't the investigators use hotels? You don't need to ask that question. They haven't used the rooms, so it's not necessary to use hotels as well. Yes, by common sense. Any sensible person would have asked that question as well, and now you've locked up those rooms. Mr. Low, Director General, of the $2 billion, how much money was spent on these rooms? Can you give us a supplementary paper? Because when we write up our report, we have to consider this aspect very cautiously. Have you finished with your questions? Yes. Alan? Mr. Chairman, we of course don't want those rooms to be used, because according to the design, those rooms are for an air disaster. We don't want to have any air disaster, of course, aircraft disaster. Anyway, we shouldn't fuel this culture. Yesterday, Chairman, we spent about 8 hours on the public hearing for Chapter 1 of this audit report. 5,700 elders have been waiting for RC residential care homes for the elderly, but in vain. They passed away before they got one. Now, we saw such a sum of money wasted going down the drain. Well, that's beyond our imagination. We're really saddened. Chairman, I accept what Mr. Lawman Low said. I accept his attitude of taking responsibility. But he himself alone would not have caused this. We know that the Director of Architectural Services is the controlling officer of this project. The PAC is, of course, most interested in controlling officers. May I ask this? According to what the STH said this morning, the role of the ASD was clarified. He actually said that as the engineering supervisor, the supervision of quality, progress, and expenditure is his duty. The controlling officers, the two departments concerned, the ASD and the CAD, must closely collaborate to guard against overspending beyond the approved estimates. And all the project items should totally comply with what had been approved by the FC. Now, Mr. Leung Kun Ki was not the DAS back then. Anyway, we target the post holder. So, Director of Architectural Services, you know the whole process. What about the development of this 1,500 square meters? In September 2007, the FC only said that it supported a reserved space of 1,500 square meters for expansion beyond or up to 2025. At that time, it was the Bureau that gave that support. It asked the department and to ask the PVC to do some reservation in terms of the foundation and area for future expansion. On the 3rd of October 2007, from the DGCA, requirements were received to immediately provide the 1,500 square meters. You turned the future tense into present tense. Why did you not require the DGCA to go back to the PVC and the GPA and report to them?
As you know that in the PVC, there are 3 parties involved. So the ASD cannot make all the decisions. So if the ASD knows but the GPA doesn't know, neither did the FSTB. So we have to consider this from the point of whether it is necessary. For ASD, do you agree that this was an oversight? Thank you for giving me an opportunity to explain. And as to why the ASD included the 1,500 square meters into the scope of the project, thereby turning it into something that is going to happen and something of the present and not something for the future. When we receive the information from the CAD in relation to the approval memo, well, our understanding is different in essence from others, as stated in the audit report. In relation to the approval from the GPA, the ASD has a different understanding from that of the CAD. If there was a risk of misunderstanding, we should have sat together to talk about it instead of just rely on our own interpretation of the memo. But the understanding of our colleague was that the 1,500 square meter was approved. And I'd like to say here that we attach importance to the mistake made from the deviation from procedure. When the audit was preparing the report, when the audit commission asked us for information last year, we found that there were areas that would give rise to mistakes. And as I said in my opening remark, in April last year all the way to July, there were 3 measures taken. And that was done before the release of the report. These measures have already been put in place to improve the situation. I'm interested to know, and I'm sure the PAC is also interested to know about the 3 measures. Perhaps more information can be supplied to us by the director of the ASD. However, he has dodged my question. When I read the information, the audit report in September 2007, obviously, the THB supported something else, not the immediate construction of the 1,500 square meters. What they supported was that the GPA should consider putting in place flexibility and sufficient space for future use. How could you have interpreted this into an immediate construction of the 1,500 square meters? If you said that this is a misunderstanding, then the PAC would have to look into whether it is just completely complete fabrication or excuses or whatever it is. Yes, I know, Director, you were not the incumbent director then, but I'm sure that there are government records, although a lot of them have been destroyed. So I would like to know, based on what did your colleagues arrive at this conclusion? Because the THB made it very clear that it is for the GPA, for the PVC to consider, but you did not go to the PVC because the THB is not part of the PVC. and they did not represent the PVC. In September 2007, the THB asked the PVC to consider putting in place 1,500 square meters for future expansion to accommodate facilities. On the 3rd of October 2007, the THB asked for an additional 1,500 square meters, and it was actually after that. And on the 3rd of October, the GPA, in the form of a memo, informed the CAD that an altogether 22,775 square meters was approved, and the required area for future expansion is also included in the schedule of accommodation. And it's because of this that the then ASD interpreted this as the 1,500 square meters was approved. But the GPA did not agree to an immediate construction for the 1,500 square meters. Why would they have understood it in this way, Mr. Siu? At that time, we have sought the views of the THB, the CAD, and the views of the LegCo. We considered the application, and then we made a recommendation to the PVC that the NOFA was at 22,775 square meters, which included the area for future expansion, that is 3,240 square meters. As a result, in the for future expansion, there is a 3,240 plus 1,500. But was the 1,500 included in written in as part of it? No. I wanted to give another opportunity for Mr. Leung, the director, to clarify, because I should not be merciful towards the ASD and harsh towards the CAD, because we have to be fair. So ASD, please make it clear. You were you as the director. The director of the ASD was the controlling officer, and if there were oversight, then you should admit it. You should not have used excuses, because the THB made a request to the PVC asking them to put in place flexibility in the foundation and the design. So you should have asked the PVC in accordance with the request of the THB. Now you said that the administrator of government property said that, well, in effect, it was an approval of the 1,500, but I don't see any information showing that. Would you reconsider your answer, Director of ASD? We are happy to supply the documents that was used back then. I mentioned about the approval of the GPA and the PVC's approval. In relation to the GPA, it was in the form of a memo when the approval was given. So, do you have the memo with you? If you are so adamant, then you should have that memo with you, otherwise it's irresponsible. Yes, I do. Please read it out. Read it out verbatim. This is from the GPA. It was back on the 3rd of October 2007. It's a memo to the CAD. In the first paragraph,
all operational divisions to be relocated is 22,774 平方米。咁the net operational floor area. Detailed information can be found in attached Annex A。咁其實咧就夾住喺後邊咧就係一個好詳細嘅 Annex 嘅。
And you'll find attached as the annex very detailed information. So you're talking about 15,000 square feet. But there was no mention about the inclusion or otherwise of the 1,500 square meter. Paragraph 2. I don't want to waste the time of the PAC. Chairman, you have hit the bullseye. In the schedule, there is no 1,500 square meters. So what supported your answer, your previous answer? In the second paragraph, it says,
Transport and Housing Bureau memo of 2007年9月21號 that it supports CAD's proposal to reserve sufficient space for future expansion to meet the demand of the aviation industry. Moreover, THB also advised that members of the electrical panel on economic services generally support the project and urged that sufficient space be provided to cater for future expansion. 咁呢段呢，就或者而家係時候翻嚟睇呢，其實我哋知。
Looking back, this is something that we should have clarified. And the understanding upon reading that paragraph at that time was that apart from the 22,775 square meters, they supported the operation space expansion. That was the understanding. So it's just 3,240. But there is a connection between the first and the second paragraph. The first paragraph is about 3,240, and in the second paragraph it was just about sufficient space. You can't all of a sudden, out of nowhere, add 1,500 square meters on top of the 3,240. Is it, well, do you see something that we don't? Okay, or can you supply us information to support what you said? Mr. Leung has been asking for 10 minutes about this, and however, you failed to answer. And it seems you have seen something that we don't, and it is a problem. We have supplied the information involved back then to the Audit Commission, and it is mentioned in the audit report that there are problems with our understanding. We have gained experience from this, and in the future we'll be very careful when it comes to following up on memos that may give rise to misunderstanding. I have to keep asking questions until I get an answer. I can not just be wishy-washy. Let me ask again. Director for ASD, do you agree that in October 2007, from the CAD, you received employers' requirement, which states that the 1,500 square meter was changed from something for the future to something for the present? You have missed one step. You should have. Only approve the 1,500 square meters after the PVC has given an approval in accordance with the THB's requests. I agree with Mr. Leung. Yes, this is something that we should have done back then. So is dereliction of duty. There was misunderstanding. There was something unclear, and we should have clarified it. No, that is not the case. It was very clear, and you did not do it. Do you understand? We're trying to get to the bottom of this. There are documents clearly stating the information, and THB has made that clear, and you've also read us the information. So everything was clear, and what you did was wrong. It's not the case that it was unclear. Mr. Leung. So the result of the audit was that the FSTB and the GPA did not know, and they weren't lying. So if you have indeed missed one step, if you hadn't missed this step, then these two parties in the PVC would have known, and they would have put a stop to it, because I believe that it won't be the case that all three parties, including the DG of the CAD, would work together in collusion to deceive the electrical. And in paragraph 2.27 all the way to 2.31, and I see that on the face of it, the director for ASD agree with the proposals in 2.25, the recommendations of the audit, that the PVC should inform department heads about the importance of timely submission of schedules of accommodation. And then you say that in 2.31 you say you accept the recommendations in 2.27, and in 2.32 you said that you accept the recommendation in 2.28. So it's 2.29, 30 and 31. You said recommendations of the audit are accepted. So how would you implement these recommendations? Can you give us a description? As stated in the report, we will issue memos, which have already been issued, to remind department heads the importance of timely submission of schedules of accommodation to the PVC for approval. And as I try to explain that sometimes because of communication issues or because of tight time schedule, we have to make special arrangements. And we have already issued memos to heads of department to submit schedules of accommodation as soon as possible for PVC's approval. And we identify 3 areas from the report, from the audit report. That is in relation to the deviation between the schedule of accommodation and the room data sheet. And we have put in place this year an electronic form. We require departments to use this electronic room data sheet. And this can be checked against the schedule of accommodation. So it's easy for us to see if there is any deviation from the approved schedule. And we've put in place this electronic form in May. We will continue to review the effectiveness of this electronic system. And we have already revised the project management manual. We asked responsible officers to put in place more checkpoints and follow them up. If there are deviations from the approved schedule, then prompt follow-up work will be taken. We'll continue with these 3 measures. We will only ask for these facilities and construction to go ahead after we make sure that there is no deviation. I want to ask about the 15,000 square feet. Ms. Chan, you are the project director. I want to know about the 15,000 square feet. How much did it take up out of the $2 billion? Was it the case that it wasn't in a tender document and it was added afterwards? How much did it cost in terms of structural enhancement? About the 15,000 square feet. If it wasn't there in the first place, you would not have needed $2 billion. Now that you have to do additional work, and a lot of people said it's a communication problem. Well, I have to put a monetary amount on this. You should have all the figures.
或者我處長啊。
Yes, Director. Chairman, may I supplement? At that time, as we thought that the 1,500 square meters was one of the requirements, and on discussion with the CAD, the 1,500 square meters area was not the same as what could be done in other projects, that we could just reserve space in a particular floor or area. Because as you could see in the table shown just now, the area was actually broken down and scattered on different floors in the office and training block and in the ATC center for future expansion beyond 2025. And the bits of space were actually reserved in different parts of the headquarters. If we enhance foundation works for all 5 blocks, expenditure in construction costs would be huge. So having considered that request, that is the CAD's request, on the allocation of the 1,500 square meters, we specified the allocation in the employer's requirement of the tender document. So the quotations or the tenders received already included this aspect. Yes, understood. But construction costs would be included, right? 22,775 square meters plus 1,500 square meters. Construction price should be involved. So don't tell me that with additional 1,500 square meters you didn't have to pay anything extra. Well, let me continue with my previous answer. In the electrical paper, we included this figure of 22,775 square meters NOFA. And we also included another figure of 65,000 square meters construction floor area. And this is our design prepared on the basis of the approved schedule of accommodation given by our client. And in terms of the foundation of the CAD headquarters, and because of the specific requirements for the ATC, we calculated in particular the 65,000 square meters, which was the construction area. And again, that was reflected in the tenders received. 65,000 square meters construction floor area, construction area. No addition? No, plus the 1,500 square meters. Yes, so there must be an increase in the construction price, and that's the question I'm asking. From the value for money perspective, that's what we'd like to know, because you said it's included in the tender. Well, if the 1,500 square meters were not included, you didn't have to use the whole of the $2 billion. And you said that there is no cost overrun. The project was completed in a timely manner. And we forked out $2 billion. However, you could have used less than $2 billion. Instead of using up all $2 billion. Yes, you could put it this way, without the additional 1,500 square meters. Then can you do some calculations for us, the construction cost per square meter? Well, if we take an average figure, it may not truly reflect, well, just some very conservative estimates then. We need to know how much was used, because we approved items, say A, B, C, D, and then you included item E as part of the $2 billion project. In fact, item E wasn't originally necessary. Well, Chairman, the more we dig, the deeper we dig, the more alarming the reality is, because we approved items A, B, C, D, and then in the tender document there were items A, B, C, D, E. So we have revealed a very big loophole here. And we need to be forward-looking, so we need to clarify the situation. Chairman, I think I understand your intention. Well, first of all, in the beginning of your question, you asked why there was no cost overrun despite the additional 1,500 square meters. Then, first of all, perhaps when they sought funding from LegCo, they exaggerated the figures. And then I thought the ASD would give an answer. And having heard their answer, I was even more alarmed, because another issue surfaced. In the paper received by LegCo, there was no mentioning of the 1,500 square meters. But in the tendering process, 1,500 square meters were actually included in the tender document, hence no cost overrun. So if it wasn't a clear and deliberate act of concealing facts from LegCo, then what was it? We need some explanation. It's very serious. Please understand that we're doing our gatekeeping job. We can provide the construction cost for the 1,500 square meters, but we need to do some analysis first. In the PWSC paper, we provided the unit cost, and that's $19,855. Maybe we can refer to the PWSC paper. So it's included in the paper, and our question is, in fact, the rate was higher. Well, Chairman, now that the Director of Architectural Services is here and we have the minutes of the PWSC meeting, we also have the annex tabled at the time. Maybe you could invite the Director to point out where R63/3/Info7. Check the yellow index page, LegCo papers. You've put down $19,786 CFA. Well, Chairman, the focus now is this. Where did the money come from for the construction of the 1,500 square meters? You're beating about the bush, you try to muddle through, but you can't fool our wise chairman. I'm not wise, we can just look at the papers, because when we compile the report, please understand that we need to be accurate about the facts. In paragraph 3 of the PWSC paper, 3A, it states the construction of the new CAD headquarters building was about 65 square meters in CFA. So looking back, indeed, the paper did not clearly specify the 1,500 square meters. In retrospect, I agree that we should have included the area. So another follow-up question. So what is the area specified in your tender document? Is it 3428 or 3428 from plus 1500? Because Chairman put it very clearly that for the construction of 1,500 square meters, cost would be involved. So did it mean that for some other items you manage to save some money, and with the accurate estimation of other projects you manage to finish it without extra cost? Or is it the case that you deliberately decided not to tell Electrical about the 1,500 square meters? So please go back and analyze the papers. Well, Chairman, I'd like the witness to give an immediate answer first. Well, because he is here in this public hearing, he should be fully prepared for the hearing. And he has also brought along the memo as he read out just now. So, being responsible, he should tell us the answer. The tender document at the time set out in detail that in relation to the net operational floor area, NOVA, the CAD's requirement, and in the tender document, it also sets out the 1,500 square meters reserve space for expansion. How the 1,500 square meters will be broken down and scattered in different floors or blocks. In the tender document, the term NOFA isn't used. NOFA is used specifically by government departments on allocation of space. Well, Director, you should know that in tender documents you use the term CFA instead, because others may not understand the difference between construction floor area and net operational floor area. So please account in terms of the CFA. Because this project adopts a design and build mold or model, and the contractor is required to follow the user's requirement, and that's why we express the requirement in terms of the net operational floor area. But before that, based on the CAD's requirement, we prepared the estimate plus the 1,500 square meters additional space. The 65,000 square meters CFA was our internal estimates. We believe that with this CFA, we could provide so many facilities. So, did it exceed 65,000 square meters? The actual area was 400 square meters more, 65,400 square meters. That means 4,000 square feet. Chairman, in that case, I want to exercise our power and request them to submit the tender document for perusal. If necessary, after the public hearing, we can follow up on other issues after the public hearing. Should I name somebody to do this? It's
都係重要嘅嚇，即係冇理由你可以無本。
Dragaji. So I'm not involved. So for 15,000 square feet additional space, it's not possible that no cost is involved, and we must find out where the construction money came from. Kenneth. We still have 25 minutes till break. Well, perhaps our witnesses are getting tired. Maybe we should suspend the meeting at 12:45. Maybe if our chairman thinks that we are almost done with part 2 and part 3, save for some follow-up questions, we can just finish parts 2 and 3 first, and then in the afternoon session we can deal with part 4 and the remaining parts. Part 2 and 3. About provision of reserve space for future expansion and control over deviations from approved schedule of accommodation, like the shower and toilet facilities. All right, let's finish these first, and then in the afternoon we can start the provision of furniture and equipment. If there are no more questions, From Mr. Ellen Leung, I don't mind starting the provision of furniture part now. Let's see if he has other questions. Well, Mr. Kenneth Leung, unless we can finish parts 2 and 3 in the morning session, I suggest we take a break now, as it is unlikely. Well, frankly, it's unlikely we can finish these parts because the more questions we ask, the fewer answers we get. And there are still other members who would like to ask questions who are not here at the moment. It may be unfair for them to it may be unfair to them, so perhaps we can suspend the meeting here. It's scheduled to end at 12:45. No, for the afternoon session, 6:30. All right, so let's adjourn for the time being. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Zhang, Secretary, and other government officials.